so insane.
I got married to a Funko Pop. Whoa. We got wedded, conjoined in a Subway shop. Whoa. I'm married to my Funko Pop. Whoa. We got joined, coitus in a Subway shop. Whoa. Vitamins and biscuits and minerals, they come to me through a tube. My whole life is spent watching on a tube. Whoa-oh. Whoa-oh-oh-oh. Whoa. I'm married to a Funko Pop. Whoa. We got wedded, we got joined in a Subway shop. Whoa. Vitamins and minerals, they come to me through a tube. Vitamins and minerals, they come from me through this here tube. Whoa. I got married.
Tell the monkey you climbed up in that tree. What you doing up there? Why you scared? Why you running from every debate? You ran from Andrew and from me. Now tell the monkey you like they female monkeys with their bananas between their trees, hanging down upside down, frown. That's a smile. It's a smile. Now tell a monkey what you doing to me. Dilla monkey, Dilla monkey. What you doing to me? Dilla mother monkey. Dilla monkey. Oh, monkey. Oh,
Open debate. Here we go again.
Where do we get the Bible from? Did you even read the canons? There is only one church, you are in a cult. You're a goblin, a demon, a boomer tard. You're so mean, I'm your dude. Is this your first plus 1 equal 3. Icons are idolatry. Why do you pray to dead people? That's the traditions of men, you heretic. Wow, 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 wow. Unmute, dude. Is this your first time on the interwebs? Shady, I need a gin that you can't take it. These low tier slow boys. Unmute, dude. What's your epistemic justification? That argument is circular, and you are refuted.
The future of
What's up, y'all?
Yo, what's up? Welcome, everybody. How y'all doing?
Battery 70%.
Hey, what's up,
Connected
Siri?
to MacBook Air.
Are you seeing anybody right
iPhone
now?
4.
Girl, you sound like you a nice little robo shorty.
Mobile device not found. Connected to iPhone 4.
Connect to me, baby. Look, we need to connect. Yo, I got straight up. I'm setting traps for Dilla Monkey. Woo, 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 woo. Look what I got, Matt. What's up, Matt? You get a little tempted? Look at that, hanging down. Woo! Matt Dilla Monkey, where you at, baby? I'm trying to tempt you right now. Woo! We straight up banana core over here, laying traps for the Dilla Monkey. Matt Dilla Monkey, you climbed up in that tree.
Climbed up in that tree.
What you doing up there? Why you scared? Why you running from every debate? You ran from Andrew and from me. Oh, Matt Dilla Monkey, you like them female monkeys with them bananas between the trees, hanging down, upside down, frown, but smile. Yes, feeling it today, y'all. In fact, some days we just gotta open it up, with a little bit of music. You know what I mean? But that's okay. It's not all day long. It's gonna be about the predilections. Y'all know about the elections going on? Y'all heard about what's going on? They over here voting. America's voting for high school president right now. Who's gonna win? Who you got? Who you betting on? Are you voting for Kamala Harris? Or are you voting for Trungadonk? Back it up, back it up, back it up. My daddy taught me good.
Absolute control.
Voice of an angel.
Simple things pointing out that we're meant to be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made.
This is to rev us up, get us prepped for today's discussion. We're going to talk about re-elections. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to do a bit of retrospective. We're going to talk about my thoughts on politics because we never cover that. As you guys know, I think politics is so normie and so boring and so dumb. We pretty much focus on meta politics and geopolitics. But today, because the entire world is focused on politics and because tomorrow's decisions or day after, or however many days they take, will affect many of our pocketbooks. You know what I'm saying? A lot of us will perhaps wake up quite a bit richer tomorrow. So that's one net positive of the situation. I'm not making everything about money. But, of course, we know that this is the first election where Bitcoin has played a huge role in the campaign rhetorics, mainly only on the side of Trump. As you know, we were at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. Got to meet some cool people, had a lot of fun. Trump spoke. He did about 30 minutes of stand-up at the Bitcoin conference. And that's a first. And, of course, we have RFK Jr., who is publicly very supportive of Trump now, also massively supporting Bitcoin. So there are some positives, especially if you are a big-time Bitcoin proponent. May wake up a lot richer tomorrow. And I'm speaking, of course, of, as you guys probably know, the very much anticipated 100K Bitcoin, which we know will then probably very soon pop to 150. We all know this is coming. A lot of people have been talking about this in the cryptosphere for many years. Will be a very momentous occasion. We're very close to all-time highs again. We're over 70 again today, which is inching up. I think this is anticipatory for the outcome of the election. I expect if there is a announcement of a Trump win, Bitcoin will immediately rocket to 80, 85. And the word is, of course, that the big institutional players that have been buying a lot have actually continued to buy a lot, and it's not really yet reflected in the public displays that are of the Bitcoin price that are based on the exchange rates, because many of these big institutional players are not buying them on the normal exchanges where the normies are buying them. They're buying them directly from Coinbase and not the public. exchange. So we're not necessarily seeing that reflected in. That could lead to a big supply crunch. And of course, as we talked about a few days ago, the big announcement from MicroStrategy to build a $42 billion Bitcoin bank of some sort in the next year, I think is what he said. That will, of course, easily, well, it will at least participate in this supply crunch and continued skyrocketing, both for Bitcoin and MicroStrategy stock.
In the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
Angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers scum. They're a giant death factories keeping babies alive. Selling their
Come on, everybody.
What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face these scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green skin and they run around screaming, "We love Satan, we want to eat babies." I have them on video.
Hillary's into creepy, weird, sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with a creepy, weird old woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. The woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur.
Literal vampire pot-bellied goblins hobbling around looking after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go high, high, high.
We're such self-centered crap, we don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of poverty, people of the very worst kind. Man, I'm so pissed.
We're gonna sell
Your daughter at the mall. Oh, oh, oh.
gonna sell
Your wife, your son. Oh,
We're gonna
stab you with a butcher knife.
and the peace chief is gonna say, we love our Somalis, we love our Muslims. Oh, they're so sweet. Oh, they're so sweet. Y'all feel it today? Y'all feeling the election? Y'all feeling the re-election? It's that kind of a day. And you know when I pop on here singing into my banana mic, full on banana core, it's about to get off of the hook. Is it not? You know it is. Now, re-elections. Re-elections. Well, first thing to say about re-elections is to keep in mind that Dr. Carroll Quigley, in his famous Tragedy and Hope text from many years ago, laying out the vantage point of the establishment during the Cold War, noted that elections have in the U.S. at the presidential level been pretty much controlled going back 60, 70, 80 years. So it was around the time of, you could say, the creation of the Fed, that also the executive branch was maybe not totally, not 100%, but largely under the sway of the power structure. And so I wouldn't go so far as to say that elections don't in any way matter, but that from the time of the establishment of the Fed, you had the emergence really of the economic dominance of our country from an inner party. After that, there were some decades before this structure began to consolidate power through other key entities that were erected. Again, sort of backdoor inner party bureaucracy entities that were set up beyond economic monetary control. This would be entities like the Council on Foreign Relations, later the Trilateral Commission, later the Bilderberg Group, etc. All of these non-governmental, private, corporate entities that were set up with the support from very wealthy oligarchical Eastern Seaboard and British elite families. Those families constitute what we call the Eastern Establishment. That doesn't mean that they're only located in the East. This includes other wealthy families all the way down to the Dixie elites, the eventually oil magnate elites, and of course the military industrial complex elites, which are not limited only to the Eastern Seaboard. But of course, the reason we talk about the Eastern Seaboard elite has a lot to do with the Eastern Establishment institutions and universities that were really the breeding grounds and the sources from which the power structure would draw its future generations of leaders. And so, for example, the OSS and the CIA, largely during these time periods of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, were recruiting from places like Princeton, Yale, Harvard, etc. So this really became the strongholds of this no longer isolationist or Americanist foreign policy, but the CFR promoted transition into an internationalist minded agenda. That was the plan, actually, of the British Royal Society and Fabian elites, who sought through many decades to convince the American establishment to jump on board with foreign interventionism, adventurism, and world policing. They attempted with the League of Nations to first do this, and that failed. At that time, the United States still had enough notion of its founding ideas of non-interventionism and not policing the world to reject the ideas of the League of Nations and so forth. And so they went back to the drawing board. A few decades later, we get the Second World War by design, and we get the solution out of this dialectical dilemma, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, being the United Nations and the idea of a global peacekeeping entity, supposedly, that would be a nascent future proto-world government model. It probably will not be the final stage technocratic model, but it was intended to be there as this seed form. And of course, the Rockefeller family had a massive role in helping to set that up, as well as the Council on Foreign Relations, as well as Trilateral Commission. And I'm not locating it only in the power of the Rockefellers. Of course, there are many elite families of varying ethnicities that played a key role in helping to set up these kinds of structures that are the real power behind the throne. And so the first thing I want to talk about, because we are going to talk about some of the reality today, is Cameron made a great video, Colonel McGregor's son, on the bureaucracy. And this is really the best sort of level one analysis that we could have, because lots of people say, well, you talk about, this other entity controls things. Well, who is that? Who is that? Well, at the most basic level, we're going to listen to Cameron's video here and work through this entrenched, we could call it, outer layer of the bureaucracy. And that's who, first and foremost, kind of is running stuff. They're not necessarily at the top of everything, because these are government institutions and entities that do definitely have a lot of power. But they're the ones that the president, first and foremost, can't necessarily immediately get control of. And we have to understand this, because a lot of normies, a lot of simple-minded people out there, they're waking up, and that's great, and that's moving in the right direction. But for one, just because of the limitations of the executive branch in the American system, the president's really limited with what he can do anyway. But even in a sort of a maximalist approach of the presidency, at the max, Trump really could only do certain things were he a completely reform, overhaul-minded individual. I hope that he is. I always want to hope for the best. Of course, the last go-round, that did not fare very well. Drain the Swamp ended up being art of the deal to put a bunch of swamp people in. And so that was a massive failure. Other projects, Fast Speed was a massive failure. And so really, I think the best that we can hope for from that focal point, it's a very visibly media powerful office, the presidency, right? Because of the perception of the powers that are there. But as for actual real power, it's very limited. So the best that we can hope for is maybe a staving off of some of these horrible policies that are absolutely fast-tracking the destruction of the country. But in order to really fix things, to really, quote, save the country, you need much more than that. You would need an overhauling, first and foremost, probably of these bureaucracies. And so Cameron's correct here, but there's other entities beyond these governmental bureaucracies that are entrenched that would also have to be removed. You would have to also go after the IRS, Federal Reserve, these kinds of things. And amazingly, Trump has mentioned these things. I think we're all mature enough over here to recognize campaign rhetoric because, you know, I've been watching presidential elections since the 90s. I wasn't super involved in politics in the 90s, but, you know, I was coming of age in the late 90s. I was, you know, graduating high school, kind of trying to understand what's going on out there. I remember, you know, first being interested in the Bush, was it Bush Gore? I think it was Bush Gore. And that one is interesting and relevant because that was when you first started hearing about, shall we say, interference. There was a big hubbub made by the left at the time to fuss about Diebold. Many documentaries were made, many interviews were being had at the time. I remember around that time was the first, my introduction to Lord Voldemort. I began to watch Lord Voldemort back around that time. So I'd say around 2001, 2, 3, 4 in there. And you started hearing the left making a big fuss. Oh, Bush stole it from Gore. Now, election fixing is not new. It's a very old, well-known thing. If we go back to the famed cases of the Kennedys, the mafia famously was brought in to help through the unions and others to sway elections in Chicago and other places, if I recall, for the Kennedys. I think that's right. And that was Joe Sr., you know, kind of pulling the strings. And as you guys know, we covered a few days ago the history of the 1953 Iran CIA coup, which kind of forms a pattern for, shall we say, deep state coups and how they operate. And that helps us, gives us an insight into the modus operandi of how that is refracted in history whenever you have these kinds of regime change operations. And regime change operation doesn't only exist in the foreign sphere. It could also happen in the domestic sphere. So if we keep those things in mind, we begin to pick apart and understand what's really going on. So let's get to level 1 of the entrenched bureaucracy and how and why Trump can't fix that. Although he can be very vocal and he can continue to hopefully talk about good things, despite all the other criticisms that we have, obviously. And we'll get to, you know, other things in history to look to. Nobody pays attention to history. This is what's weird to me, is that, you know, like I was saying, I'm not new to politics. I got really involved in the 2000s in the Rand Paul days, listening and being very, interested in campaigning and this kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm not a new kid on the block here. I'm more like Jenny from the block than a new kid on the block, right? Don't be fooled by the rocks that I got. I'm just Jenny from the block. So again, hope your Diddy oil is in the microwave. Is it warming up? I hope so. Get ready because we're about to kick it off. Let's get into Cameron's video and understand the first layer of the bureaucracy, and then we'll get into more of the history and other things.
The triad have suffered severe consequences like assassination or impeachment. That all demonstrates the fact that presidents cannot control the U.S. government. In order to do so, you would need to fundamentally overhaul and reorganize the government itself, and that would require a kind of revolutionary party apparatus, a separatist reform movement that would restaff, reorganize, and completely overhaul the government as it's structured today. Welcome back to Men and the City. In today's video, we are going to talk about why the next president will fail. Abraham Lincoln once said that the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. Well, one of the persistent dogmas of our time is that elections have consequences. Indeed, this is what we are being told on a daily basis about the upcoming presidential election, that it is the most important election in our lifetimes. But any keen observer of Western politics in general, and the United States specifically, will note that in recent times, elections do not have consequences, that despite the coming and going of elected officials, nothing meaningfully changes or reforms. Well, why is that? That is the subject of today's video. I think there are three major reasons why presidential elections at this point are all but irrelevant. The first reason is control. In order for the president to exert control over the U.S. government, at a minimum, the president must control three things. I call it the triad. He must control the executive branch, the 15 some odd departments that fall under the direct purview of the President of the United States. These are departments like Justice or Treasury or Homeland Security, for example. The second leg of the triad is the military-industrial complex itself, and that goes well beyond simply the Defense Department. It includes the feeder systems, the nonprofits, the think tanks, the special interests that all more or less drive our foreign policy and our national security strategy forward, independently of any elected officials.
Right, let's comment on this, the first two of Cameron's three here. This is absolutely essential to understanding really politics at all and how it functions in today's, in modernity. The president and the branches don't really run things, right? So you have the legislative, the executive, judicial. Those branches do enact things, they do things, but they're not necessarily calling the shots, or the level to which they call the shots can be very limited depending upon how complicit and willing they are to go along with the entrenched bureaucracy that we're talking about, which is not just a bureaucracy that's governmental. This is a key point to stress against the libertarians who will hear something like this and immediately assume that the problems are these wasteful government entities. That's only half of the story. In fact, when he mentioned the military-industrial complex, that element of the Defense Department, or the Department of War as it used to be called, that is intimately bound up with the corporate interests that profit from war. They have no desire to cease the wars. They want more wars. This should be 101. And so war is a racket, as General Smedley Butler said a long time ago. War is one of the most profitable enterprises out there. In fact, it might be the most profitable, perhaps up there with fiat currency, perhaps up there with human, TRAFFICKING. All of those things are part and parcel of the machine, as we might call it. Welcome, my son, to the machine. Which, of course, Pink Floyd are actually now voices and promoters of the machine, ironically. They plaster their profiles with everything that every establishment Democrat boomer imagines. But regardless, this entrenched bureaucracy here, again, is not a purely governmental function. It is a public-private partnership of shareholders in Raytheon, Boeing, etc., these large defense companies that have much more power and influence than any senator, politician, or whatever. They essentially can buy the politicians and the senators and so forth. And that's why you don't find at the time of actual policy enactments or law enactments real opposition to the wars. You find opposition to the war during campaign times. And then when the officials get in, suddenly they flip. Well, that's because there's nothing really that can stop or hold back these kinds of entities other than mass public dissatisfaction with the war machine. But as we've seen since going back to the pre-9 event times, which I've been watching and analyzing all of this stuff since pre-9, if you look at something like the pre-9 event, that really ramped up, and in the perfect strategic planning of the Project for a New American Century was the basis for the justification for the rebuilding of the American war machine. Now again, these are not wars fought for defensive purposes. I could understand in 2002-3, a lot less information was available to people back then. People were still on the whole very normy. So I could understand them not really grasping or getting the power of the military-industrial complex. But post-Big 9 event was really where people began to question the wars in the modern era. I know people were questioning the wars in Vietnam, but the defense contractors, and wait a minute, Kellogg, Brown, Root, Raytheon, Boeing, etc. These entities seem to be profiting immensely. DynCorp, etc. How are they making so much? Well, it's from the conflicts. And so they have a vested interest in things like Big 9, things like Ukraine conflict, etc., etc. Things like toppling Assad. Other players as well, foreign governments, foreign Middle Eastern governments have interests in getting the American war machine to go and fight for them and with them. Greater nation state projects, if you catch my meaning, in the Middle East. These play a huge role in this military-industrial complex structure, which plays on the patriotism of, which is good-willed and natural to people, but it plays on the natural desire that you have to get you to fight for Coke, Pepsi, and abortion and Subway, you see. So that's really that structure just in the MIC side of things and how it operates. And that's just one component. You could include the oil companies in that as well. And when I say that, I'm not advocating for, electric vehicles will be the solution to everything. I'm just simply stating the facts as they are about real-world geopolitics. There obviously was a big factor in terms of oil in the Middle East, which is ironic because we don't really need foreign oil. But it was Kissinger and the Bilderberg Group, as part of this power structure that I'm talking about, that placed us intentionally on dependence on foreign oil, which is part and parcel of this foreign interventionism that we supposedly have to do. So whenever Trump talks about opening up and drilling oil here natively, that's another huge problem that these people don't want. They do not stand to gain anything, in fact, they stand to lose a lot were that to happen. This is ironic because the left, which if you remember back to post-Big 9, it was the left that championed questioning all of these things. The biggest irony, the most insane good think level theta clear mind control programming I've ever seen is precisely the flipping of the left from being anti-corporate to worshiping corporations in our day. It's insane. Koof literally made every leftist a complete mouthpiece goblin of the Fortune 100. It's wild. Never seen anything like that. But that really convinced me of the principles that Orwell lays out, that they're not merely literary. They're actual mind control principles that could literally flip a person into advocating the most insane stuff within a few years. Literally flip their position to the exact opposite. Worshipping the Fortune 100, which were formerly, a few years earlier, the greatest enemy, the warmonger. And now they're the savior. The sacraments are had by the Fortune 100 to the left. The left sees and worships at the altar of the Fortune 100, giving them their booster sacraments.
The third leg of the triad consists of the intelligence apparatus. Now, specifically, there are three main components.
Now, this is huge. Do you understand why, for so long on my channel, I've talked about the history of the intelligence agencies, the history of how they operate, what they do? It is precisely because of what Cameron is telling you in this video. Until those things are resolved, the president is really emasculated. I don't mean as an individual he's emasculated. Trump is very much alpha. He's very alpha Chad, no doubt about it. But in terms of actual power, he's restricted because of the power that these entrenched bureaucracies actually possess.
Central Intelligence Agency, which basically operates independently. The second is the National Security Agency, which falls under the Defense Department. And the third is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, which falls under the Justice Department.
You can't always plan when you'll need a gun. Rational gun owners carry not because
no president in recent history has been able to get control of the triad. And presidents that tried, presidents like JFK or Richard Nixon, and in recent years, Donald Trump, have suffered severe consequences like assassination or impeachment. That all demonstrates the fact that presidents...
Now, what's amazing about this point in the discussion is that, if you remember, the heads of these agencies are so bold and brazen in our day that they can openly speak about what they want to do and plan to do to remove the elected executive branch official. Isn't that pretty wild? If you ever doubted any of the things you hear me talk about, we'll go and look at Mudd and others, Pelosi and others, who have literally openly said that Trump needs to be this, that, you know what I'm saying, right? They're able to freely and openly say it. And yet it's still called insane CT, right? Tinfoil things. Even though these people can openly say these things. That's pretty wild. That's when you're living in an Orwellian type of dystopia, basically.
And not control the U.S. government. Well, the second reason why the presidential election doesn't much matter is because of breakdown. Now, what is the U.S. government today? Well, basically, it's three major programs. It's the New Deal from the 1930s, which gave us Social Security, unemployment, insurance, and food stamps. It's the military-industrial complex itself, so named by President Eisenhower, which gave us the services, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard. It gave us the nuclear triad, and it gave us all kinds of off-the-book or hidden intelligence agencies and departments that haven't been controlled for decades. The third program is the Great Society. The Great Society gave us Medicare, Medicaid, Housing and Urban Development, the Civil Rights Act, so forth and so on. Well, if you look at the budget...
Now, essentially, here he's talking about the bloviation and the expansion, much like you see the body of, say, Eric Ibarra, bloviating and expanding in great measure. The federal government bloviated and expanded under these so-called projects that are really just forms of socialism. It's not full-on outright communism, but as you guys know, going back to the Fabian model, they decided a long time ago not to go for the outright full-on revolution overnight. That model doesn't work. It's not very effective. What's much more effective is a very slow, decades-long model of rolling out Fabian socialism, rolling out socialism through things like this that just, again, gradually expand this machine, this beast that just keeps expanding through essentially theft. It's essentially just stealing from the population, the public, under the guise of creating things like a great society, the welfare state, and so forth. That's just one arm of this giant machine, all of which is largely frauds and scams. I know there are EBT cards, and I know many of us love to sing the song, swipe my EBT, swipe my EBT, swipe my EBT, right? But despite those aesthetically pleasing musical hits, in reality, this system is a large fraud system that has now been expanded to be given to on purpose and offered to people brought in not from here, if you catch my drift.
Of the United States today. What is it? It's basically...
In other words, it's a weapon. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a social engineering weapon. Great Society, EBT, food stamps, all of that. It's not just theft. It's also social engineering to create a blob mass of totally mind-controlled zombie people. We're going to see some examples of these zombie people. The Kamala people, the white boys for Kamala, right? All, et cetera, to create this Gollum zombie-minded mass of individuals who can be turned at will like a giant Lovecraftian entity from beyond.
Those three programs. That's where all the spending is allocated. We spent about $1 trillion a year on defense alone, and the rest of all of our revenue goes to paying for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, which have become mandatory spending programs by law that basically eat up the entire federal budget. So that tells you exactly what the federal government really is. Now, what's noteworthy about those three programs is not simply the morass of agencies and departments that govern them and the bureaucracies that administer them. It's also the age of the programs. The New Deal is a legacy of the 1930s. It's almost 100 years old. The military-industrial complex, as I said, goes back to the 50s, and the Great Society goes back to the 1960s. So what you can observe is that the governmental structure that we currently have to deal with is breaking down because it's old, it's decrepit, it's unnecessarily large and unwieldy. But again, the President of the United States, whomever they may be, can't get control of it, can't.
Now, that's a great point, right? The bureaucracy is so bloviated and so massive. It's also just because of that size. It's difficult and probably impossible for a president to get control of it. Now, the other thing, too, is that we know that if there is a trunk-a-dunk tomorrow, if there's a victory, the system will immediately go into the next round of throwing all of its energy, weight, money, and apparatus into Russiagate 3.0. Now, that may not be actually Russia. It could be who knows what. And we saw that the previous time around, Fauci, for example, told us Trump will have to deal with something like a pandemic. Right, so we got kind of indicators and signs and signals and foreshadowing from the puppet masters. I'm not saying that Fauci is actually a puppet master. He's a frontispiece. But that there would be certain things that would happen that would cause significant disruptions to allowing really this president to do anything or to affect anything or to change anything. And so we know that even if, let's say Trump says, we're going to have an overhaul, it's going to be a great overhaul, the greatest overhaul, really, have you seen this, really? It's an amazing overhaul. We're going to get rid of this guy over here. Kamala, have you seen this Kamala? I don't think she's very smart. Do you think she's smart? I don't think she's smart. Can she do mathematics? I don't, 2 + 2, 4. I don't think she knows where she is even, really. Can we get rid of all of this bloviated excess? Maybe we can. We'll see. I think Trump, even if he were able to try to clean house and all this stuff, the system will put so much pressure again through another hoax. And by the way, it doesn't even at this point matter really like how much legitimacy there is to these things. But you know that the same entities, the British intelligence structures that were working with Hillary to create the Steele dossier and all of that, you know they've already got the next thing kind of in the works. Now, the good news is that all of those, the legal indictments and all, the Steele Peace Gate stuff, all of that failed, which is kind of surprising because usually that seems to work. At least previous presidents have not been as Teflon Don, right? like John Gotti or something, in dealing with that level of opposition. And so I don't know what they'll cook up, but it doesn't really matter, because there is still this mindless golem level 30% of the population that will believe anything. And so there will be enough energy and momentum, even if it's completely preposterous, as Russiagate always was, as we said from the very beginning, that it will cause Trump to have to constantly focus and talk about it, to the detriment of getting anything done. And just like the last time around, there will be so much attention and focus on something completely, I'm sure, made up, that it will be an exercise in kind of exhaustion. Sort of like how Brzezinski basically got the Soviets so bogged down in 1979 Afghanistan that eventually the Soviets, the empire, ended up collapsing because they were exhausted from all of these conflicts. And so probably the establishment is going to continue to try to unleash just nonstop fake scandals to bog down the administration to where nothing actually ever gets done. Again, I'm not saying that will be successful per se. Maybe Trump will get some things done. I know that right away what we will see is movement up of the stock market, crypto popping off. That's probably what will happen. So what do I think will happen? I think probably at this stage it's looking like it's edging towards Trump. Right now, I believe that in the real world, it's a landslide Trump. It's obvious that Kamala did not have hardly any groundswell support. I think the polls are fake, but we can't underestimate the ability and the power of the system to do and sway things as they want. That's my assessment at this point. But remember, even if Trump wins and all the MAGA people will be celebrating and this and that, that doesn't, like, there could be OKC type events, right, from loons and people that are, say, hyped up into that right away. And I agree with Lord Voldemort that that's probably already what the system is wanting to roll out. So that's my prediction. Should there tomorrow be a Trunkadunk victory? If there is a announcement of some Kamala Harris victory, I do not expect there to be actual organic revolutions, uprising, or something like this. There could be the provocateuring of that. I mean, we could go into full-on, like, Kamala announces, like, the nanny state, like the full-on lockdown. I mean, that's possible. I think they would need probably some crises for that to occur. I am kind of surprised at the level of calmness that we've seen. I did see a couple news stories where they were alleging, shall we say, light-skinned supremacists who were like teenagers were planning to take out power grids. Who believes that teenagers and, like, fat nerdy dudes are going to actually... I'm not kidding. I saw an NBC News story today that chunky white dudes were planning to take down the power grid. Okay, who really believes that? Well, like the 30% Kamala people believe that, right? Anyway, so the system really has to have, depending upon what's... let me take that back. Actually, regardless of what's announced tomorrow, it seems like we've got to have... there's got to be some crises, right? What are the manufactured crises? It seems like most likely something to do with skin color, race type things, right? Which I believe will completely be manufactured and provocateured. Those kinds of organic events are very rare. They're just not real. But the system, the establishment, its narrative, its story. Remember going back to Creepy Joe. Remember when Joe was up there with that like dictatorship level stuff in the background, like 1984 red black background. Remember that? And it was all about we got to defeat the, cracker supremacy going on, that kind of stuff. Remember that? This thing. Remember this creepy ass thing that scared everybody to death. And Joe's up there whispering about taking care of the threat of the cracker supremacists. And it is kind of surprising to me that they didn't even go for any policy. That's kind of wild. Like literally the only thing that they ended up running Kamala on was abortions and stopping Trump from becoming Hitler, right? Tiny mustache man. That's all they. That's kind of wild. But what does that tell you about their base, right? That tells you that the people supporting this are literally some of the stupidest people imaginable. Like they're actually just running on still Trump, Hitler, and abortions free. That's it. That's the policies. Pretty wild. And that and like Kamala's crazy 70% taxes or whatever her crazy capital gains, like straight up. Like even Karl Marx is over there sweating when he's like, bro, that's pretty wild. Even Karl Marx is getting nervous about Kamala's tax plan. By the way, thank you. We got over 1,400. If you would hit like and share. It's just, don't you think that's kind of wild? Let's go back. Think back to the Democrats going back to like Bush-Gore days, right? Bush-Gore days, the Dems were very heavily focused on their policies. And as I tweeted this week, another thing that's kind of shocking is the Democrats in the Bush, Gore, even Clinton days were running on these platforms of the wall and how illegal immigration hurts American workers. That's wild to see them become the ultimate NAFTA GATT party. Remember Ross Perot? It's a sucking sound. It's a sucking sound, Larry. It's a giant sucking sound. And I take that back about Gore because Al Gore was actually pro-NAFTA. But Clinton, you can find the old Clinton speeches of him running against open borders. But if I remember, I think, Gore was like, it's going to be great, Larry. NAFTA is great. That's what he was running on. But Clinton was actually running on shutting down the border because it's hurting the workers. What's up, everybody? Shout out to, we got almost 1,500. We did hit over 1,500 a minute ago. If you are enjoying the stream, hit like. Also, support the stream via Super Chats. Everybody's, what's up with all the stinginess today? Look, this audience ought to be happy because it's looking like we're going to get a Trump announcement of victory. That doesn't mean the country's fixed. Because we talk about the real issues over here. We don't play into these fantasies of like what normies think. Like we do real analysis over here. So, I'm going to be straight up and tell you, no, Trump can't fix the country. We can begin to have discussions about how the country can be fixed down the road. So the biggest positive of Trump is that Trump has broken through the public discussion clampdown. That's it. If we think back to the first Trump administration, Trump ran on anti-war. Trump ran on fixing the economy. If you remember, Trump even ran on anti-stabby. Remember that? Again, one of the biggest failures was not keeping to that anti-stabby stuff in the campaign rhetoric period. Trump ran on even criticizing Federal Reserve. Trump ran, again, anti-war. Drain the swamp. Trump 2016 was Pepe meme, dark energy in a good sense, right? Like the real dark MAGA, original era, edgy stuff. Same time, also, what was happening 2016? Remember that? JBP, Peterson breaking through. So that was a very crucial linchpin period, a pivot period, when the mainstream story and narrative was really beginning to be challenged at a level we've never seen. Remember, at that time, Lord Voldemort was blowing up. I mean, the show was massive. Millions and millions and millions of views every day at that time. Things were looking pretty good on the upside at that time, 2016. What were the major mistakes being made at that time? Well, immediately, what did Trump do? Now, I heard that in the inner whisperings that certain deals were made about RNC money. Trump ran that I'm a billionaire, I don't need RNC money, and so therefore they can't buy me. Remember, that was another big campaign slogan. I can't be bought. I'm a billionaire, I don't need their money. I got my own money, I don't need it. They can't control me. It's great, it's wonderful, really. Remember this? But the temptation to take RNC money and then put the worst possible people like Bolton and all these goons immediately demoralized his base. Everybody got immediately mad at the time. Now, I have been through enough of this stuff over the years that I didn't have high expectations. But the biggest plus of 2016 era was to be able to begin to talk about how the mainstream narratives are fake. And what was the big thing then? Fake news. Look at the fake news. Look back there, the cameras. They won't show the crowd. The fake news media, they're amazing, really. Probably gonna lie, don't you? They're probably gonna lie, I think. Pretty much all lies. What do you think? They're like Joe, Sleepy Joe. They're all gonna lie, really. What do you think? They're all lying. And that's the first break that we saw. And Trump had this just reckless, just making fun of everybody. Jeb, Marco Rubio, look at this guy, just low energy. Remember, it was funny. And everybody was like, whoa, we've never seen anything like this. We've never seen somebody just like a wrecking ball, just making fun of everybody, blasting out tweets. And it worked. It worked. It was crazy. But then the reality caught up to the rhetoric. And it was pretty quick that not only did Trump make some mistakes with who he appointed and all of that, there was originally, wasn't there, remember back 2016, wasn't there like an original kind of cast of Patriot characters? There was like Flynn and Colonel McGregor and these, decent characters, good characters. And then everything was done by the establishment to clear all those people out, and immediately in comes the swamp. So this was massive mistakes. Massive mistakes. Thank you, I appreciate that. I have been working on my Trump. I think it is getting better. Almost as good as Gillis. Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, it is getting better. And what was the secret to all of this? Yakub. No, I'm just joking. Then the establishment said, okay, even with the goons in his administration, he's still too much of a wrecking, too much of a loose cannon. So we roll out the big psyops. We get QAnon. We get, which is ridiculous. I said day one, it was ridiculous. Not that all things they were talking about day one were ridiculous, but the idea of this being this white hats is just so stupid. Okay, and if you fell for it, I'm sorry, but I was right all along, and you fell for it. So there was that. Russiagate. Trump is a Russian agent. How do we know? Well, because Russia hacked the DNC. They hacked the election. Well, what's the proof of this? Oh, little boomer ads based out of Macedonia. What? Boomer ads on Facebook swung the election to Trump? This is crazy stuff. But boomers and the 30% Kabbalah, Harris, Gollum crowd type people, right? The Hillary crowd, I'm with her. Everybody jumps on board. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Totally, yes. Zuckerberg failed to put the clamp down on this. Cambridge Analytics, blah, 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 all this gibberish. And it was all completely ridiculous. Completely made up. Tiny 1 inch, not even an inch. Like boomers saw this and it swung the election. It's just so stupid. But the left believes this. Then we get P-gate. Oh, yes, you see, because Trump was at a hotel one time and the Russians got the dirt on him. And it didn't even make any sense. Like, what policies was Trump doing that were aiding and making Russia the victor? It was just, none of it even had to make sense. And then it turns out, oh, it's actually coming out of British intelligence. Steele dossier, Christopher Steele, all these former British intelligence operatives who have been saying, it turns out, we later learn, during this time, working in their think tanks, in their integrity initiative leaks and so forth, to do whatever is necessary to ensure that there's not a second Trunkadunk. That all came out, and everybody fished through the information and found this. Then they found out that the same superstructure, bureaucracy structure, was trying to compromise Papadopoulos, buy off compromise, sex operatives, you name it, Carter Page, all that stuff. Roger Stone's working with Assange, with Russia. And all of that failed. But they had enough fake stream media pumping all of this out nonstop that people just assumed that, well, there must be something there because if there's all this smoke, there's got to be fire. Even though all of this was just completely based on something completely fabricated by former British intelligence, which essentially means that Hillary and the CIA said to the former British intelligence and the think tanks and so forth, we need this, concoct this to ensure that the real superstructure continues forward and we don't have to deal with this goofball Trump, right? That does not mean that Trump does not have alliances with other factions of the power structure. Obviously he does. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. The other thing, of course, is that this is really, unfortunately, unavoidable in politics. There's no way anyone will be in the presidency at all without support from Sheldon Adelson and these kinds of characters. Now, this doesn't seem necessary, though, if we look at the Trump money claims. Remember, Trump claiming, I don't need the money. I'm a billionaire. I've got my own money. I don't need that money. Oh, well, that was the 2016 rhetoric. Where is that rhetoric? Right? So again, I think that if we were to really look at weaknesses here, perhaps the weakness is money. If I were to give an assessment, and again, I'm not in politics, so I don't know how all this works or whatever, but if I were to give my biggest criticism of Trump, I would say it sounds like the weakness is that you wanted to run on this idea that I'm not party to Washington's dirty politics because I can't be bought. But then you end up relying on money from entities that are pretty nefarious and can pretty much control the right wing that don't allow anything to really get done. So that doesn't make sense, you see. That would be my biggest criticism. Obviously, the next biggest criticism would be fast speed, if you know what I mean, and choosing the worst possible people for the administration. So, what can we expect if there's a Trump victory? Probably not much difference in terms of the next 4 years, except that we will see in the immediate a giant leap in Bitcoin, a giant leap in the rest of the cryptos, and in the stock market. So if you're positioned well economically, if you've got your bags set right now, and if Trump wins tomorrow, you're going to wake up a lot richer tomorrow, and it will probably kick off the crypto bull run that everyone's waiting on for this cycle. Because although we have seen Bitcoin do well this year, again, we're very close to a new all-time high. People aren't really paying attention to this. The crypto markets are kind of quiet. They've been kind of quiet, and people aren't talking about this on a mass scale. If Trump wins, there will be popping off Bitcoin, I expect, and everybody will be piling back into what's Bitcoin? Where's coin? How do I get Coinbase app? Where do I get this? Blah blah blah. That's my guess. Probably the stocks are going to go up. MicroStrategy will probably keep going up. But the real issue is, yes, you can write in Yakub. So a lot of people are asking me, I don't want to vote for Trump or Kamala. What's the answer? There's only one answer. And it's the answer that shines forth from our creator as white people. It is Yakub. Yakub created us. Yakub can save us. So yes, if you don't want to vote for Trump or Kamala, you do have the option to write in Yakub, as you can see. Now, other things that came to mind that I thought were funny, was surprising to see Elon sharing this. I don't know what to make of this. I'm just surprised to see him share this. Now this, again, recalls 2016 era discussions. I do not believe all of what was said about this at the time is fake. I do believe there's some truth in this event. I do believe they were able to come in and bloviate and bring in a bunch of fake stuff to dispel and remove discussion of this topic. So it's pretty wild just to see within a day Elon shared this with 30 million views. That's pretty wild. That's a net positive to see that being discussed. I did comment. This comment went viral. Everyone's up in arms about Peanut the squirrel. Where's the outrage over the abortion in the last year? What, a million in a year? And the 325K smuggled, trafficked people. Now somebody said, where's your proof of that? Believe it or not, Parker Lewis to the rescue. Parker Lewis went and got the actual data from the media and government websites about that very thing. So shout out to Parker Lewis right there for replying to that idiot in the comments, acting as if it was all made up. This I did just to troll people. I thought it was kind of funny. Who do you think went to hell? Peanut, Harambe, or Cecil? People didn't remember Cecil the lion. Where you guys been at? This is like meme history. You don't remember Cecil? Cecil was right before Harambe, right? In fact, Harambe stole the limelight from Cecil. And then came Peanut. And it seems like most people think they all went to hell, which is crazy because you see so many memes of them in heaven. Anyway, where's the Kamala dude? That's what I'm looking. I'm looking for that Kamala dude. I thought that was funny. This guy, okay. This guy who has his own podcast. It's hard to understand these people. I just said to him that you're pretty much the perfectly conditioned doublethink theta clear. That's really the only thing I could think of, because if you read his comment, it's kind of next level, right? My name is Ryan. I'm 42-year-old husband, father, veteran. I voted for Kamakamonk and Tim Walz to protect my daughter's right to choose. Wow. Think about that. So in other words, in order to protect my lineage, it must be destroyed. It's literally the doublethink that we're dealing with these people. I don't think I've seen a better example of this from a single tweet person in a long time. I hope everybody can see this. It's almost like leftism and atheism, and it's almost like it makes you stupid. Have you noticed that? I'm not equating theism necessarily with IQ, but there is something to the fact that the fool says in his heart there's no God, because these people always end up being fools. You become foolish. Isn't that interesting? We can all recognize, I think over here on our side, the contradiction in this, the obvious contradiction in this. Yes, perfectly conditioned. In Orwell, it's called, what was it called, like good think, right? This guy is perfectly conditioned to good think. And good think is when you are so perfectly conditioned that it just comes natural to you to repeat the party line. There's never one inkling of critical thought about the party line. It's just repeat the party line. I thought that was exemplary there. Now, let's get back to the discussion of the bureaucracy, the real control structure, and what we realistically can and can't expect from a Trunkadunk, or what we'll expect from a Kamala Harris victory.
Arrest that breakdown. Now, why is that? The reason for that is because in order to do so, you would need to fundamentally overhaul and reorganize the government itself, and that would require a kind of revolutionary party apparatus, a separatist reform movement that would restaff, reorganize, and completely overhaul the government as it's structured today. Needless to say, neither candidate is proposing such a thing, and there's no promise of such a development in the near future. Which brings us to the third reason why the presidential election doesn't much matter, and that is a convergence of crises. Specifically, let's talk about the fiscal crisis. Well, we know that roughly speaking, every 100 days, the federal government is adding about $1 trillion to the national debt.
Nearly $33 trillion. That's what the U.S. national debt was as of early September 2023. At the end of July 2023, when the debt was about $300 billion less, roughly $7 trillion of that was intragovernmental debt holdings, meaning the government owes itself that money. The majority of the debt, about $25.7 trillion, was held by the public.
Now, in recent years, the national debt has become irrelevant. It's ignored. Nobody seems to care. But now it matters, and it matters not simply because the government is old and decrepit and not properly administering a lot of these programs, but because interest rates are rising.
In order to find enough demand for the ongoing onslaught of issuance, we're going to have to find that appropriate yield that garners added interest by investors. Where will that yield be? I can't tell you, but as you look at a chart of 10-year rates going back to the early 1960s, going from 5% to 15% can happen pretty quickly.
The interest rates themselves reflect confidence in the U.S. government, and that confidence is waning, not simply from foreigners that buy our debt, but also from domestic institutions like pension funds that are increasingly skeptical that the U.S. government...
Yeah, and this is the locus of the problem, the entrenched monetary disaster black hole known as the Federal Reserve, and the money printing machine that is in everybody's face, literally destroying the purchasing power of your money and destroying the dollar, destroying the country. The only way out of this, as you guys know, in my view, is Bitcoin. Gold is not the solution. Gold could be a solution if the dollar were to go back on some kind of hard currency like the dollar. It would certainly be way better than what we have. But that doesn't seem likely. And we had, of course, these whisperings in the last several months via the Bitcoin conference and other situations of putting the dollar on a Bitcoin standard or investing some of the U.S. reserves or something in Bitcoin, or whatever the whisperings were. That's not enough to fix this problem. This is an entrenched black hole, champagne supernova of debt that can't be fixed by a president taking 1% of Bitcoin and putting it into reserves, right? That's just not enough to stop this insanity. That's the real locus of power for the system, is that right there. That is the mother entity, right? Think about Alien. Remember in Aliens when Ripley goes into the mother's hive and you see the mama aliens over there like pumping out all of these little face huggers. There's a bunch of face huggers like the FBI and the CIA and blah blah blah, all these entities out there. The mother is this Federal Reserve System. That's the central core power of the elite, the legacy elite system. There is no other option, and unfortunately, they have a large share in gold. They do not have controlling interest of Bitcoin because it's decentralized. And even if BlackRock and MicroStrategy, both between them, end up owning 1% or 5% of Bitcoin, they can't affect or destroy the network. So it's still, whatever flaw you find in Bitcoin. Well, what about the wallet and this and that? No. Look, tomorrow, if Trump wins, what it looks like, you're all going to wake up a lot richer, and you're all going to wish you had Bitcoin, and you're going to be mad at me because your butt hurt because you thought you were smart. We can get that Dyer. Let's show that Dyer. Bitcoin going to do zero. And then tomorrow, it's not going to be zero. Even if Kamala wins, it's not going to matter. Bitcoin will outlive Kamala and Trump. And if you would like to support me via Bitcoin, you can do so right here is my QR code for my wallet. You can support me in any amount. I appreciate that. If you want to send Bitcoin there, you can. If you'd like to get started with Bitcoin, I recommend avoiding the large exchanges. At this time, it looks like the best option for just buying Bitcoin is Swan Bitcoin. You can get started with Swan right there. I'm not a registered financial advisor. But we have a beautiful fast boy, not slow boy, fast boy audience over here. And our audience is able to figure these things out and figure out what's the smart option here. And look, what did we just tell you guys, right? MicroStrategy is going to build a $42 billion Bitcoin bank next year. That's only going to impact this price. Microsoft is voting on including Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Do you understand this? Listen, slow people. We are past the phase of this being weird nerd internet money and cartel laundering money. We are at the stage now, since this year, January, institutional adoption and acceptance. Major corporations now switching to this. Microsoft, even their boomer board told their shareholders, we advise against it, but because you want it, we have to let you vote on Bitcoin being on the Microsoft balance sheet. Hey dummies, do you understand? It's not conspiracy money anymore. We're at that phase. This is the shift. When the monetary policy of the world is potentially changing. It will be this. Michael Saylor is evangelizing the corporations. Even the slow motion boomers are beginning to figure this out. And grudgingly having to admit, although probably privately, like Jamie Dimon and others, they've been buying it for a long time. And telling their idiots that it's going to zero. When it hits 100K, will you idiots in the chat still be telling me it's going to zero? I can't. Like, the people who are this slow and this out to lunch about what's going on in the world, will you still be telling me it's going to zero? When Bitcoin hits 1 million, and it will, mark my words, Bitcoin will hit $1 million. I don't know when. Probably, we're almost at 100. I would say in the next 5 to 10, we'll hit 1 million. Will you still be telling me
It's going to zero. It's going to zero.
Will pay them back. The second crisis is a domestic economic and financial crisis. Well, as most of you know, in the United States today, the economy is simply not as productive as it once was. In fact, most of what's driving the economy today is government spending, which, as I said, is both inefficient and unaffordable. But the general population, the middle class, is being battered by structural unemployment because since COVID, major small business investment and dynamism has completely dried up. It's died. And of course, we're dealing with the legacy of an industrial economy that has teetered, that has withered on the vine since the 1980s as the United States has deindustrialized. On top of that, we've got inflation, which is causing a cost of living crisis as we speak. The cost of groceries, of energy are rising while Americans are struggling to find jobs. So that's a domestic economic crisis that's only going to get worse and start to manifest in a banking crisis or other financial institutions that blow up as the underlying strength of the economy begins to seize up. The third crisis, and perhaps the most serious at this stage, is the prospect of very serious war with geopolitical rivals. This is manifest in tension between the United States and Russia in Ukraine, or between the United States and its ally Israel against Iran in the Middle East, or tensions between the US and China in East Asia. Tensions are rising, and as I said, because the President of the United States cannot get control of the triad, because he cannot arrest the warmongering of the military-industrial complex, the likelihood that the next president can de-escalate these conflicts is extremely unlikely. So, if you add it all up, the lack of control over the U.S. government, the inability to arrest the breakdown of an aging structure that's almost 100 years old, depending on where you want to start the clock, and the emergent crises that are beginning to overwhelm the U.S. government all suggest that the next president will fail. Stay tuned for more.
Now, does that mean we have to be miserable and black-pilled? No. We got to think reality-wise, best possible scenarios, what the pros are, and not be overly optimistic and deluded and then get let down when things perhaps get worse. So, what are the best things that we can hope for should Trump win tomorrow? The best things that we can hope for are, in my view, the economy begins to show a bit of a return. Again, stocks and Bitcoin pop off. Trump's able perhaps to stave off globalization in the sense of jobs going overseas, which he attempted to do the last time around. There seemed to be some of that. Perhaps we do open up some drilling here, reducing our dependence on foreign oil, which is not even necessary. A lot of the fake environmental regulations are there to actually prop that up. That's all the Kissinger era stuff. So the positives are a lot of the boomer era horrible worst technocrats have passed away. Kissinger's gone, Brzezinski's gone, Rockefeller's gone. We're beginning to see the transference of the passing on of the torch to the Gen X people. Boomers are passing away. They're some of the worst in the history of the world in terms of leadership and squandering and just horrible ethics. You know my feelings on that. I don't mean every single boomer. But overall, as a generation, they're a massive failure. And there's many reasons for that. We've talked about that ad nauseum. So even though Trump is boomer, there are at least enough Gen X sentiments and the Gen X apathy, perhaps to where there's some bright signs in Gen X leadership to be not as degenerate and not as horrible as the boomer era leadership that we had. So I think maybe we can begin to see maybe more types of Elon Musks in the sense of the good parts of Musk. I'm so tired of people asking me, what do you think about Elon Musk? And I've answered this question a million times, and it's pretty much always the same answers that I've given about any major figure, whether it's Putin, whether it's Trump, or whether it's Musk. There are no heroes. There are no perfect people. There are no angels. When they do something good, it's good. And when they do something bad, it's bad. So that's really all we can say. So please don't ask me the low IQ normie question. What do you think about Elon Musk? Is he going to save us? What do you think about Donald Trump? Is he going to save us? Nobody's going to save you. Nobody. None of these people are going to save you. Because they're not up against a person. They're up against an entrenched legacy bureaucracy system, a gerontocracy, which is in many ways dying. So that's the positives. Remember, let's think about our positives. Let's talk about our pros. We're talking right now the pros of Trump. Pros are we can still hopefully keep hammering away in the info war sphere. We can keep talking about the problems of the legacy control system, which is still very entrenched and still very powerful. That's a positive. We keep chipping away. We keep hammering away as best we can, trying to change minds and hearts, right? Because we can still, if we get another 4 years of positive stuff, Trump-wise, we can still chip away and still hammer away, even though there's going to be immense opposition. But the good part about that is everyone will again continue to see an entrenched evil establishment throwing everything they can at Trump. And even if Trump is not ideal in other ways, that will still hopefully continue to wake people up. But if everyone places all their eggs in the Trump basket and thinks that Trump's going to fix everything, you're just going to be let down. I can tell you that for sure. So positives, again, economic positives probably in the short term. Maybe a scaling back of these ridiculous foreign wars and conflicts. Maybe. Trump seemed to have some finesse and out of the deal. The out of the deal. Remember when he art of the dealed a lot of stuff back in 2016 to 2020? So perhaps we can scale back some of that. That'll be a positive. Perhaps some jobs will be a positive. There's not really anything that Trump can do, though, with the ridiculous money printing Federal Reserve stuff. I mean, he can continue to vocalize and continue to talk about it, but this system is destined for destruction. It will eventually implode. There will eventually be, as Cameron says, some form of massive economic collapse. You can't have this level of debt, this level of money printing that they're doing, destroying the purchasing power of the dollar, and it not come home to roost. And everybody in the last year, especially, has seen it come home to roost. Eggs are like 3 to 5 times what they used to be only a few years ago. Everyone's groceries are doubled and tripled. Going out to eat is like $150 for a couple people when it used to be, I mean, dude, even the 90s. I remember if I took a date out in the 90s, it was like $30 to $40. And now it's like $100 to $150. That's crazy. That's like a 5x. What are eggs? So, anyway, more positives. More positives of Trump. I'm not sure I can think of many more positives. Can you guys think of many more positives? We will get crypto, pro Bitcoin, pro crypto. That'll be a positive with Trump. Can you think of anything else? I'm trying to think of what the other positives might be. If Kamala gets elected, what are we going to think? All right, let's talk about cons of Trump. Cons of Trump are going to be that the system is going to throw everything again And so we're going to have a repeat of 2016 to 2020. So we're going to have whatever the next Russiagate 3.0 crisis is. We're going to have fake flag stuff by the establishment popping off. We may have that either way, right? I'm aware of the weakness, the flaws of Trump's pro-life positions. I think this is a mistake. But he's got these basically we have a Democrat from the 90s is what we've got. So I don't know what to make of that. Now, there's some of that is good because even in the 90s, the so-called conservatives were garbage. But I'm still trying to think of what might be positives or positive or negatives. What do you guys think in the chat? If you want to send me a super chat about what you think are positives or negatives, let me know. Nectario says for $5, Emperor Donald Trump will win. Hey, so we got people calling it. Let's see if I can let's do a poll, and I want you guys to give me what you guys think in your opinion. Will it be Trump or Kabbalah? And let's start a poll for the chat. I don't think I've ever done a poll. So you guys vote there if you can. Did you guys see that? Is that showing up? Whether you think it's Trump or Kabbalah. This is our native Jay's Analysis poll here to see. Pretty heavily one-sided, I think we can assume. But also, let me know what you think the pros or cons are going to be. If we get a Trump presidency, what are the pros? I think this compromise on, pro-life to try to bring in Tulsi and RFK, I think that's a mistake. I think we could have gotten their endorsements without that. I mean, maybe that's not why he did it. Maybe he really did. Melania has pro-choice views. So this is another factor here. This is a huge mistake. Will we actually see border action? I hope, right? I mean, we got a lot of talk about this in the first time around. And then we got some sort of pseudo wall that kind of was built but then paused. So again, maybe this falls back into the domain of, can the president actually build a wall? You know what I mean? Like, not does he have the legal authority or whatever, but does he have the power against the entrenched bureaucracy to actually do that? That's the question, right? Another downside is, the Trump thing. I think the biggest positive that we could say is, as Orthodox, who's better for Orthodoxy? Well, certainly not Kamala. And the best thing I could say about Trump is, well, he at least doesn't hate our country. So we've got somebody horrible for Orthodoxy, actually demonic policies, who, hates the country, versus someone who at least doesn't hate the country. I wish he loved our country as much as Middle Eastern countries. That might be nice. And who's the best for Orthodox Christianity? Well, right, that's what the saints say, essentially, right? Choose on that basis. Vane, $5. Good afternoon, brother. I just voted in a state that is very much red, but I voted anyway. Christ is risen. Thank you. Appreciate that, Vane. DC Woodworking, $3. Thank you guys so much for that support. Anonymous, $10. Listen, you can vote for Yakub, but I'm going to write in Jay Dyer and then Afranzia Weinmom as VP. Also another option. However, it is we are on the misogynist party. So, a lot of people have issues with the misogyny party. We are a red. Our colors are red because we're red in the face from all the Franzia that we drink. So we have that. We have that hobo disease where your face gets red from drinking too much. And so our party colors are red. That symbolizes the red Franzia. Our music is sung by Redman, the rapper, and you can write me in. But also, maybe you want to write Yakub in. Matthew, $5. Is Trump actually going to make the U.S. better? Well, this is what we're trying to determine today. So I think that in certain ways, we'll see positives if Trump wins. But I think that this is why when you grow out of your normie politics fervor, which many of us have in our 20s, like I said, going back to the Ron Paul era in the 2000s when I was in my 20s and being, really into that type of politics and whatever. I think when you grow out of it, you kind of understand that the country is run by what we're talking about here. And it's not run by the president. It's not run by the public branches. It's run by this. And until we can get people to the point where they recognize that, nothing changes. And all of you out there who listen to people, you're listening to your Matt Walshes or whoever, they don't talk about this. All right? This is not what you're allowed to talk about. And until we can get enough of the normies and the dum-dums to understand this, stuff's not going to change. Because people are going to think that it's all being determined and decided at the level of the president and the lawmakers. The lawmakers in Washington. As if it's not these entities that are the real power players. Now, why can't someone like a Matt Walsh, who's intelligent, or a Knowles, or whoever, why can't they talk about this stuff? Well, it might be because of their contracts. And it might be because they legitimately are ignorant. And they think that the boobs in Washington control everything. Now, we got to get past the boobs in Washington. It's what Cameron is talking about. It's what I always talk about. The real power structure, the entrenched bureaucracy, the NGOs, the foundations, the think tanks, the Federal Reserve, the private banks of the Federal. That's who really controls things. The Fortune 100. It's not the sex-compromised senator from Washington that runs shit, okay? Yeah, until we can get past Con Inc., nothing will change. And until we can understand foreign governments' control, right? What do I think about Tony Hinchcliffe? It's just, I think it's nothing. It's literally standard comedian fare that the Democrats have latched onto because their only policy is Trump is Hitler. That's it. So anything that they can find to try to play on that, that's all they have. Like I said, it's wild if you've watched politics since the 90s to see people really running on nothing except Abraham and Trump Hitler. That's pretty wild. I'll put the video in the chat for you guys. Our friend Cameron McGregor. Cameron is Colonel Douglas McGregor's son, so you can watch his video. Thank you guys for the support. Now, it looks like in our poll, no shocker there, we had a pretty unanimous Trump at 84%, Kamala Harris at 15%. Not surprising. That's pretty much what I expected that this audience would project. But really, what I was hoping was that you guys would vote on what you thought would happen, not voting on who you liked. Obviously, nobody in this audience would like the wine mom candidacy, but who you thought would win. Let's see. Trump seems like another controlled op. He's there by banks. He pretends to hate banks. I feel like things are rigged. Again, I know, man. Don't you think I've heard all this a million times? So we're trying to analyze things at a realistic level here, what we can actually expect. Linwater, $5. Jay, I love what you've been doing in your videos lately. Can we get a quick Donald talking to Richard Dawkins? Well, for a $5 impression, you'll get
Richard Dawkins, a wonderful guy, really crazy guy. He kind of looks like a turtle if you look at... Don't you think he looks like a turtle? I think he does, really. He's just got a turtle fossil face. He looks kind of like he's gonna tip over like a fossil.
Well, Donald, I think you're actually quite evil, if I was to say so myself, although I don't have any standard for what evil is because everything's evolving.
How's that? Charshi, $10. What are your thoughts on people like Fuentes, Rittenhouse, others not voting for Trump because of his establishment and they don't agree 100%? Seems like pissing in the wind or just falling on a sword for virtue. I don't really ultimately think it's a huge deal whether or not people vote or not. But, in the Orthodox view, again, I think that, like FDA said, if you do choose to vote, then you need to vote for who is the best for Orthodoxy. That's it. Detective 27, $10. It'll be God's judgment on the country if Kabbalah wins. You know what? I think it'll be God's judgment no matter what, right? I mean, it is possible for us to have a national repentance and all this kind of stuff. I'm not sure that we're going to get that anytime soon. But again, here's my thought. I don't think about some person fixing things in the next 4 years. I'll start thinking long term about what are the forms that we want to see instantiated down the road. So like Cameron said, there would have to ultimately be some future overhaul that, I don't know how that would occur, constitutional convention, future president, I have no idea. Some sort of overhaul of the bureaucracy would have to happen to see real change. Perhaps, best case scenario, the discussions that Trump initiates could be the beginning forms of that 10, 20 years down the road. That's possible. That's our best case scenario. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Perhaps what we're discussing nowadays is the seed form for the better forms that we want to see brought about in 10, 20, 30 years. That's our best case scenario. That's what I'm saying. And maybe 10, 20, 30 years down the road, that leads to lawful means and methods by which we reestablish things. Does that make sense? That's our best case scenario. Now, to get to that, though, might entail... I'm not advocating this. I don't believe in accelerationism or anything like that. I think that's evil. We're not allowed to advocate for accelerationism as Orthodox. But perhaps maybe 4 years from now, let's say Kabbalah wins. 4 years from now, we get a massive economic collapse. Let's say she initiates all of her horrible policies, and the economy collapses. Everybody tied to the dollar, which is pretty much everybody unless you're really into gold and Bitcoin, will not do well in that scenario. Then out of this, we begin to have discussions of real issues and reform, perhaps because things are bad. True patriots, true conservatives, true right-wing people continue the discussion of the Fed, usury, the dollar, all of that. There's enough of an awareness that we begin to discuss new forms. Perhaps the country collapses and new forms are established, right, in the next 5-10 years. Perhaps the global elite, because of it being a legacy system, and they push so hard with all of their agenda and the, gender agenda and all of it, maybe they go full bore and try to have a war. And maybe that leads to the collapse and the reestablishing of a new form. I think Cameron's correct, though, that we can't expect this legacy system to work and to be there long term. I suspect that the global elite technocrat establishment just like what I'm saying, does not expect the legacy system to continue. How they intend to collapse and dispel the system, I am not sure. I don't know whether they want to do a Cloward and Piven economic type of collapse, whether they want to continue the gradualism to move into the new form. But we know that they have a new form that they have established. It's in all the global elite texts. We've lectured through it many times. They want a completely centralized, technocratic, top-down, 100% track trace controlled, 15 minutes super dystopian city model. That's what they want. That's their future form that we know they want to bring in. And they may bring that in. I don't think it'll be long-term successful. But that's what they want. I don't know. I'm not saying that Kamala Harris will bring that. No, we're talking 10, 20, 30 years down the road. That's the plan. We are approaching the 2030 goals, though. So 2030 will be huge for the global elite power structure. We know they have many stated goals for what they want by 2030, and probably many of those goals are behind. So perhaps 2030 to 2040, in a lot of their timelines, that's a key point to roll out the technocracy, to roll out the total control economically, everything horrible in the dystopian novels is what we're talking about, 2030 to 2040. Okay, that's what they want. Now, again, we don't know that they'll get that. But that's their form. That's the future form they want to use the Gen Z speak, manifest. We also, though, on our side, have perhaps future forms that we need to be talking about. And I'm talking about, some form of traditional, conservative, religious-based, I don't know about Christian nationalism or maybe Byzantine model. Something like that is what we need to begin to discuss, because the legacy system is going away. How fast, we don't know. How drastic, we don't know. But the old Federal Reserve model, the old legacy media model of boomer satellite cable TV, FM radio, the dollar, like all that boomer shit's going away. That's the legacy model that is going away. But we don't know how fast and how drastic. But we need to begin to think beyond Trump, okay? Because best case scenario is Trump, 4 years and a bit of a staving off of the bad stuff. But we got to be realistic that until the bureaucracy is gone, and until the Federal Reserve and all this military-industrial complex, which is the positive, the good side is that is part of the legacy system, right? Until that's gone, we're not going to have substantial on-the-ground change in this country. Can we get a new positive form without that stuff collapsing? I don't know. That's a tough question. Because we know, again, that the elite power structure, which is tied to the legacy system, also knows that it's a legacy system. So let's not be naive here and think that, like Matt Walsh or something, that the Democrats are a bunch of dummies and they're buffoons. No, there's a layer of social engineer technocrats above them that are really running things, and they're not dumb. And they have a layer of dumb to protect them, the politicians. We know that they know that the legacy system is going to die, and we know the form they want to bring. The international global technocratic order. The Klaus Schwab model of Fourth Industrial Revolution. So, how are they going to get that? That's the question. I don't think I think they see Trump as an annoyance, but they're not worried long term, because they know that, as we said, as long as this bureaucracy is there, this snake will shed its skin to create the new snake, you see. Stefan DV, $10. Trump had an Orthodox priest at the start of his rally. That's huge. That is good. That's a good sign. Number 2, maybe we'll not have World War III. So that's a good thing. Yes. So we're talking about the positives of Trump here. I am a little concerned about this broad tent stuff, right? With, let's have the Sikhs praying and let's have the Hindus praying at the, at the GOP. And like that's this ecumenist stuff. The GOP is not a good sign. I understand the political expediency argument. I know all that, but you go on to say Trump says Christians will never need to vote again. I don't know what that means. I heard him say that. Maybe he just misspoke. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. 4, Trump is bad for international business, but I heard it was a huge issue in 2016. I'm not sure. Maybe you mean global corporations are not happy with Trump. Anonymous $3. Jay, I'm 23. I've been seeking out a career in the Army, Navy, Special Forces. I'm very conflicted. I'm aware of these topics in our fake society. Can I do this in good faith and be orthodox? What are your thoughts? I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. I just know that, there were times in my youth when I thought about and considered military stuff and all that. I would never fight for the things that this country stands for now. So you got to make that decision with your own conscience, but I would not. Anonymous $1. Harris says, quote, I don't need polls. I trust my intuition, Joe. That tells you all that you need to know. She knows that entities have her back. Nothing substantial has changed since 2020 to fix certain rigging. Kabbalah sympathizer, $5. A con for Trump is his record on labor unions. Well, the problem with the labor unions is that I don't think nowadays labor unions are really what they were originally intended to be. I think they were kind of a long time ago co-opted by particularly Rockefellers and then by organized crime. I don't keep up with what labor unions are up to today, but I assume that it's still probably corrupt. But I don't know. Seraphim Leo, $1. It's a misconception to think that every foreign person wants Trump to win. Bagel wants someone who is easy to control. Trump is not easy to control. Someone who got their big break by giving sexual favors might be easy to control. Well, I would agree that if you're sexually compromised, absolutely. Elliot, $2. The Agenda 2025 would enable Trump to actually do stuff. Are you talking about Project 2025? Or are you talking about the UN Agenda 2025? I'm not sure which thing you mean. You're talking about Project 2025? The media hates Project 2025. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Trump has distanced himself, but perhaps he will actually enact it. I don't know if I don't have much hope in any of that kind of stuff. Maybe. Lick Kev, $1.30. Jay, I'm from the UK. We have a new PM. They're super liberal, global elite, socialist. Do you think Trump can sort him out? I don't know what you mean by sort him out. Trump's campaign sued my governing party for election interference. Christ is risen. Indeed he is. Well, it's funny. When we talk about election interference, what about British intelligence? Election interference, because they admittedly said they didn't want Trump, and Steele dossier is British intel stuff. JML, $30. The pro of Trump could be that the campaign to Schedule F all government employees. Musk would help with that restructuring. I wonder if that really would mean these bureaucracies. I know they've mentioned this. I remember when Elon was talking about that. I hope so. Best case scenario, maybe. Could they really do that? What do you guys think? Is this realistic? Is Jay not aware of the Willie Brown situation? I've heard of Willie Brown. What is this? I don't know about. No, I guess I'm not. I don't really follow a lot of politics drama. So, unless it relates to geopolitics, like Steele dossier. Like I went deep dive on all that stuff. Deep dive into Integrity Initiative and all that, Skripal, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. What's the Willie Brown BJ incident? This sounds pretty gross. Trump said that Christians wouldn't need to vote because he thinks Christians don't vote. So he says they wouldn't need to anymore. I still don't understand what that means. Varela, the second, $20. Putin opened up a special visa migration for Westerns with conservative views to move to Russia. Yeah, I mean, this has been kind of happening actually since 2018, 19, in varying degrees. Should we flee the liberal imperium and go there? I mean, I can't tell you what to do. I mean, I've had friends that have moved there, spent time there, took his family there, a year there. There's a lot of difficulties in doing that. But also, I guess it depends on where you go. I don't know anything about it, honestly. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of culture shock if you try to go to some Russian village. That's not for me, but I think a lot of people too have these kind of stupid ideas, like they think they're going to move to some, Orthodox imperium, and that you're not moving to that, man. But it's really a decision that will depend on a case-by-case basis, so I can't tell you that. Anonymous, $10. Best case scenario is Kamala wins. There's a mass Orthodox conversion. Okay, well, I don't think this does not seem very likely. There's an economic crash that leads to a monarchy, where we get a theology and geopolitically knowledgeable Van Damme fan who has experience in speaking to the masses. I like where this is going. I like Anonymous's plan here. This is Anonymous's Project 2025, where we essentially get a JCVD presidency, which I called for on my Twitter, right? We get a JCVD presidency. We get a JD vice presidency, right? Everybody's talking about JD Vance. No, JD vice presidency, meaning me. We get 4 years of Van Damme, basically cleaning house, one-man machine attack program. He's, roundhousing, Ralph Child. He's roundhousing the Rockefellers. Basically, JCVD beats up everybody. We get a year of partying like this, literally like this. Everyone the nation learns this as our national dance. We have national anthems. First time ever now we have a national dance. It is the Van Damme from Kickboxer. Van Damme initiates this transition phase of America from a secular democracy to a Orthodox imperium. And then I step to the fore the 4 years after that. That's probably what would happen for sure. Yes, exactly. Also, another untapped potentiality is we get the Beaver wave, right? Justin Bieber. So everybody's expecting red wave, not red wave. What about a purple wave? Has anybody considered a Beaver wave? No. So, and why is that? Because none of you actually know what's going on. Only the elite know this. And the other possibility that no one's talking about, which could be a Black Swan event, Kony 2012/2024. What if a Joseph Kony pops back up? Everybody thought, oh, he's gone. It's going to be Jeb. No, I'm talking crazier than Jeb. I'm talking Kony 2012. Nobody is expecting this curveball right here. Joseph Kony pops up. He wins the election. Nigerian intelligence sweeps in, clears house. The swamp is cleared out. We get a favorable Kony dictatorship, a positive Kony dictatorship. And then we transition to orthodoxy. Also a possibility. that few are considering. Only the highest IQ are considering this possibility right now. Guys, I want to remind you that we do have a show sponsor. I'm having a lot of fun with you guys today. Jay woke up and chose silliness. Bro, we already live in idiocracy. It's already beef supreme, dude. What are you talking about? We already live under a beef supreme presidency. Another option few are considering is Project Pat 2024, right? We get the players ball government. What if the players ball comes in? They clear house, right? We get 4 years of scissor up. Is anyone considering that? Also a possibility that few are considering. Guys, 100% you got to be ready for these anomalies. Right? Because we all remember 2016, everybody woke up and they were like, what? We thought it was her. Seraphim Leo, I just came across this. Pope makes rare house visit to abortion advocate's house. Can't wait for the trads to react to that. Well, there's nothing that will change the trad. I mean, the trads are like, once the Pope put out a Funko Pope for them, he pretty much sealed the deal of their souls forever being in his grasp. Charshi, $2. There's so many stupid people in this country. Evil and misanthropic as it sounds. Perhaps a collapse and a reset is good. Is a 90% depop. I don't think we should think like that, right? I mean, it's not our job to have this accelerationist mindset. That's ultimately up to divine providence. If God decides that the world is so wicked that that's necessary, then that's going to be what happens. But I don't think we're supposed to ever have the attitude of, oh, well, I'm going to partake of evil and promote evil so that good may come. No, that's not what we're supposed to do. That's pretty evil. Quantum Funko Pope, Quantum Project Pat, Quantum Coney, Quantum Van Dam. These are also possibilities. Perhaps through retroactive quantum fomal causation, we cause the Project Pat presidency to come about. That's also a possibility that few are considering. How am I racist as hell? Nothing I'm talking about. So it's racist for me to want Project Pat to take it. Project Pat would run the country better than freaking Kabbalah, dude. What are you talking about? No, I'm literally saying Project Pat would run the country way better than Kabbalah Harris. How is that racist? That's actually not racist. That's actually pro-black. And I'm being 100% serious. Every one of you goobers in the chats knows damn well you'd rather have President Pat over President Kabbalah Harris. You all know that. But I got to remind you that we have a show sponsor.
I want to show off something that we're all proud of.
Not only
browser here.
Dang it. We have a show sponsor, and not only is that show sponsor the best in supplementation to get your butt fit, to get you swolled, to get you straight, Chalk.com. My little friend Vivek Roboswamy has a word for you.
I'm gonna put you on something crazy real quick. Most of these Zoomer gym bros are consuming macro-guzzling synthetic dyes and synthetic sweeteners on the daily. They don't even know it. Goofy AF. There's nothing great about that. Do not listen any further unless you are an alpha or sigma male. This is important and there could be consequences. There's a new certified sigma male pre-workout powder for sigmas only. It is guaranteed to empower you to dominate your co-workers, fire your boss, aggressively gamble, or invade a small village. Chad Mode stands out from the crowd by excluding artificial flavors, preservatives, sweeteners, and dyes. We've even avoided so-called natural flavors, which are actually not natural at all, ensuring a clean and effective formula. Experience the pure goodness of Chad Mode, colored with organic blue spirulina extract, organic lemon, cherry, and organic maple crystals. Forget synthetic caffeine made in a sketchy Chinese lab. Embrace the natural power of organic green coffee bean extract, which will get your mind going and pump you up to the max. Chad Mode is made in America with all clean ingredients, the first clean pre-workout of its kind. Why are these people adding synthetic sweeteners to every single pre-workout when there are many studied downsides to consuming nasty fake sucralose? Each dose of Chad Mode contains the kick of a cup and a half of coffee, delivering a surge of energy alongside essential vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and herbal extracts. Chad Mode will allow you to fire your boss and dominate anyone who opposes you. Chad Mode will make you more dominant in your daily life, so proceed with caution. It's as simple as mixing 1 or 2 scoops of our fine powder into water or juice, providing you with a delicious, energizing beverage featuring a burst of sweet organic fruit flavor. Chad Mode will give you the extra edge you desperately crave. Don't miss out. Secure your supply of Chad Mode on TikTok Shop with a
Remind you guys to head over to choq.com, choq.com. Now, also, we have our Icon Conference coming up this weekend. November, this weekend, Friday, what is it, I guess, Friday? So in a few days, if you're in the Florida area, you want to come to our Icon Conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. We can have discussion and lectures by myself, Father Vladimir, Father Theodore, Father Deacon Ananias. We'll all be presenting on the topic of iconography. It's going to be very deep. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's not expensive, one-day conference for $30, and that's not going to me, it's going to the church. So if you want to come check us out, come support us, be sure and get your tickets. The links are underneath this. It's also in the show description over here on YouTube. You can get your tickets to the Icon Conference right here. No, I'm not pushing anyone away from CHOQ. CHOQ is a great sponsor. The ads are funny. They're intended to be funny. So you're just wasting your time with those comments. And CHOQ is who made the ad, dummy. They made that ad. And we love to make funny ads. And I would assume that people have the IQ to figure that out. That obviously the ad's a joke. But... well, Jonathan Pajot is in Canada, so Jonathan Pajot can't come to our Florida conference. So that is a idiotic comment. But my priest is studying iconography, so it's not like... Can you stop spamming the chat, dude? Come on. So my priest is a very talented artist, and he's actually studying to become an iconographer under a very prominent person. And it's going to be a great conference, so get your tickets. Vendier, $3. Jay, I'm a big fan. Do you think the rhetoric that America is a Christian country has any merit to it? I mean, it may be in a nominal sense, not in a real sort of, beefy sense, maybe in like a vegetarian sense, but not in a beefy sense because, it's really grounded on some Christian principles and a lot of Enlightenment principles. So, nominally Christian, maybe it would be ideally moving in the direction of Christian. As a Catholic, I struggle to buy into this with the Masonic origins. I think, as we've said many times, I've done a lot of talks on this, America was always kind of in this internal struggle. Would it go in the direction of its Christian principles or its Enlightenment principles? And I think pretty obviously America has definitely gone full sail in the direction of its Enlightenment principles. So as time goes by, it more and more sheds the Christian elements, and so that's why I think we have to start thinking down the road for new forms. Zach, $10. Do you have long-term concerns about Elon? Honestly, no. People get so scared and free. What if he's Antichrist? I mean, if I'm a Christian, I'm not supposed to be worried about any of that. But no, I'm not worried that. Remember when everybody was saying Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. Oh, so stupid. And there's nothing more idiotic than when people try to pick out who they think the Antichrist is. Now, I'm not saying that you can't eventually do that because that'll be obvious. But no, I don't think Elon is the Antichrist. JML, $20. Is Christian nationalism a slogan of New Apostolic Reformation? I don't know what that is. They are approaching theosis and think they're the apostles. That just sounds like a cult. So I would avoid anything to do with that. Christian nationalism is really, I mean, in terms of the Byzantine Imperium and the Christian model, when you have a majority Orthodox Christian population, that can begin to be reflected in the state, and the state can then have laws based on Christian principles. So that's what that's about, and that's the normal, classic, traditional Orthodox Christian history position. Ortho Debo, $3. Did you know Project Pat is a pastor now? Yeah, I did see those clips. That's pretty funny. God willing, it will be Father Deacon Pretorius. Patristic Pat. That's funny. Many years from East Tennessee. Thank you. Appreciate that, Ortho. Brendan, $3. Are people the same as they always were? Yeah, in terms of human nature, yeah. Human nature doesn't change. What about mentally and emotionally? I think probably in modernity with the rise of internet and toxic entertainment and everything else, there's probably a lot higher rates of emotional problems and mental problems. After the Enlightenment, human thought seems to rely heavily on continued advancements on all fronts of humanity. Well, that was the Enlightenment idea of perpetual progress, yes. Stories from the past still speak to us greatly today. Yeah, I think on this channel, we are heavily rooted in history. I have a history degree. I was 2 classes away from a double major in philosophy and history in my undergrad. So, history is absolutely essential for being educated, for having wisdom, understanding the world, not making the mistakes of the past. So we're big on history over here. A lot of the talks we do are grounded in history. So, this is one of the critiques that we have of modernity and the internet and the semblance of education, the pseudo-education that people get through the internet. Not always, but oftentimes, for example, YouTube videos alone, scrolling, that's pseudo-education. You're not actually getting educated if you're not reading the books. You will never be able to replace the education that comes from working your way through texts. So a lot of today's people, society, etc., they have a semblance of education, not real education, because they can't work through books. Carter, $2. Do you think smoking cigars is based? I don't think it matters at all. I think, how does Paul say it, right? Whether you drink or don't drink is of no account. George Washington Barfer, $5. Bow down to your Nigerian overlords. If you mean Coney 2012, yes, I will bow down. Saint Bizzle, $3. If anyone believes in accelerationism, look at Argentina in 1920. Compare it to how it looks now, and you realize it doesn't work. It just turns your country into a third world dump. Yeah, I think that a lot of time, really accelerationism is just another type of revolutionary thinking. And Marx, look at Marx. Marx was a accelerationist, and he thought that the only way you would ever get the awakening of the working class was through worsening situations and pressures. So, for example, if you read at Marxist.org, there's classic old school essays and talks from Marx and Engels about why they supported open borders. Now, you might think, well, why would Marx be for open borders? That doesn't make any sense, because that's like an economic incentive of a mega capitalist neoliberal proponent. Well, Marx says that the greatest way to upset and awaken the working class would be through open borders. That was Marx's idea. Now, he doesn't think that it's going to help the workers. He just thinks it will enrage them and awaken them to class consciousness and the revolution. Now, all of that was idiotic, but it's kind of like Dark Knight Rises, right? This is the thinking of Bane, right? Bane, I was born in adversity. Right? Bane thinks that if he initiates the accelerationism in Gotham City, then they'll get this enlightened Bane order of basically a kind of communism or whatever. And if you watch the movie, there's actually communist symbolism. Like, Cillian Murphy is situated like Robespierre up on this, makeshift throne when he's like judging who lives and dies, right? So it's actually hinting at what I'm talking about. And one of the points, oddly enough, this was very odd to see this in the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight. I don't know why. I'm not sure why to this day he wanted that in there. But, I'm not saying that the, Ayn Randian monopoly elites are good people. It is very uncommon in Hollywood, though, to see a movie where the socialist revolution is pictured as the bad guys. But maybe that's just because, maybe in that film, Nolan is presenting like a faux pseudo-right where, Bane's Committee for Public Safety, Robespierre Revolution ends up in everybody getting their heads cut off in Gotham City. So actually, all along, it was better off that you be ruled by, mega super technocrat Bruce Wayne. Maybe that's the point of the movie. Which, again, even still, is very odd and rare in Hollywood. And I'm not saying that means that I want to be under a technocrat. I'm just saying that it's a bizarre... it's not a common message in Hollywood. And they're even quoting, like, it shows a grave at the end of Dark Knight with quotes from, like, Tale of Two Cities or something weird, which, again, is, Dickens talking about French Revolution. St. Basil, $3. No, we already read that. Lucosis, $5. Who remembers a dollar menu? Dollar store, now a Dollar Tree. I haven't eaten at McDonald's in probably 20 years. Does the dollar menu exist or not? I don't even know. Actually, older, longer than that. I haven't eaten at McDonald's since probably like before the Big 9 event. Probably the last thing I ever had was like an Egg McMuffin in the morning. Probably in the year 2000. Isn't that crazy? 24 years of no McDonkadonks. And that's why you see such a beautiful visage before you, in part. Thatandchalk.com. Dustin, $3. Where on the political spectrum do you fall? I mean, orthodox, traditional, conservative, morally. I really have I'm not involved in any political stuff, really. Obviously, I think Trump is the better candidate for Orthodox Christianity. What's the ideal government? A Byzantium. How's that? Lopan, $5. You might have even had a better Trump impression than Shane Gillis. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't even know how to judge that because at a certain point, impressions kind of... It's like the impressions all kind of sound the same. You know what I mean? Remember when everybody was impersonating, back in the day, Christopher Walken? And then eventually everybody's Christopher Walken impression sounds like a Christopher Walken impression? So, appreciate that comment, though. No Face Kill Out, $5. I've been visiting the liturgy for a month. I came from Protestantism. I was agnostic, but then I turned spiritualist, and now converting to Orthodoxy. Hey, that's great to hear. Appreciate that. I also quit weed for a month, and I was curious about the church's position on that. I don't think there is a official position on something that could have medicinal effects. So I do think that there can be a case made for the medicinal uses of THC, etc. I don't think there's any question about that. But I think that in terms of other questions, you would take that up with your spiritual father. So I don't give people personal advice or like medical advice or anything like that. Those are kinds of, just like your diet, like you take that up with your spiritual father. DJ Paul, what about, I mean, dude, a DJ Paul presidency would be better than a Kabbalah presidency. Guys, remember you can support my channel by super chats or heading over to chalk.com and use the promo code J40, Jay40, to get 40% off all those great products if you want to test them out. If you want a better discount, use the promo code JAY44LIFE, that's JAY44LIFE. You don't get 15% off, you get 44% off, and you can cancel at any time. Chalk is the best in supplementation. They're very strict about their purity standards at Chalk. And that goes for anything, whether it's the Tomcat 100, proven to boost testosterone in those peer-reviewed studies, or whether it's the pre-workout Chad mode. There's no synthetic, fake, toxic ingredients. Everything over there is 100% pure. And they're very precise and strict about that. Chalk.com, promo code JAY44LIFE. You can also head on over to Jay's Analysis in the shop, and you can get signed copies of my books, Esoteric Hollywood 1, Esoteric Hollywood 2, the Red Book, 660 pages of all of my geopolitical works, my philosophical works, smashed together in one book. Or you can get Jamie's great books and products as well. And yes, everything at the website is signed. So you don't have to put in a no, you don't have to request, you don't have to worry. Jay, will it be signed? Yes, the advantage of getting the books from me is that you do not give money to Jeff Bezos, and the books are signed. So yes, everything over here does come signed. Obviously, the Jamie's cream does not come signed. That's not under the purview of autographs. And yes, be sure and get your tickets to the conference. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Otherwise, everybody have a lot. Keep your head up. Don't worry. Don't get crazy worried about this kind of stuff. Politics comes and goes. Remember, we're focused on things that are eternal, but we can hope for the best. And remember to stack your Bitcoin and to hodl and be prepared for what may come. Otherwise, everybody have a good night.